Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Mathieu and Kailey Leinz.
The ballroom is out of the bill. Welcome to the Wednesday edition as Republicans on Capitol Hill try to advance a reconciliation bill to fund immigration enforcement. Now that President Trump's anti-weaponization fund is on ice and the White House ballroom is yanked from the legislation, at least on the committee level. I'm Joe Mathieu alongside Kailey Leinz in Washington today. This could, Kailey, presumably mean a vote-a-rama as soon as tonight.
The question is going to be what could come up in that vote-a-rama, potentially amendments that would codify into law the idea that you can never have an anti-weaponization fund, that it's not enough for the DOJ and Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche to say that the administration is dropping it. There are Republican senators who want to make sure that that is actually written into legislative text somewhere. So we could see an amendment in that vein put forward. Obviously, that would mean we're seeing once again more evidence of a break, it seems, between Republicans on Capitol Hill and the Republican in the White House, President Trump.
That's right. And there could be more where that came from in a war powers vote that's expected to hit the House floor soon as an hour from now. And Kailey, it looks like this time it will pass. Whether that means any change in White House policy or the massive military presence that we've amassed in the Middle East, still technically in a ceasefire with Iran, remains to be seen. But it does feel like the president is finding the line on Capitol Hill. Yeah,
certainly. And you say there technically is a ceasefire right now. It doesn't necessarily look like one on the ground.
A shooting ceasefire.
Yeah, firing. And of course, there were incredible images from the airport in Kuwait where a person was actually killed because of a drone attack. So clearly, the tensions are not really abating in the Middle East, even if they aren't necessarily escalating either. And we have no news on whether or not we're getting any closer to an actual agreement with Iran.
To the contrary, the president telling a podcast today in the New York Post that the Strait of Hormuz could be closed through Labor Day, which is not exactly given the markets a lift.
Yeah, especially if that means all the way through summer driving season. Gasoline prices could be higher, with oil prices a little bit higher today as well. So let's get a check on those and everything else in financial markets as we turn to Charlie Pellet up in New York. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Kailey. Certainly summing up what is happening with U.S. equity markets. I'm going to take you right to the numbers here. We got a sell-off underway. We're off session lows, but still looking at losses with the S&P now at 75.64. We are down 45 points. Yesterday, you recall, we had a close above 7,600 at a record. S&P today down by 0.6%. The Dow down 427 points now, down 0.8%. The Nasdaq Composite Index down 247 on Nasdaq, a drop there of 0.9%. But as stocks decline, we have got semiconductors pushing higher. The SOX, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index, up now by 1.1%. All of this with a VIX just above 16 and a 10-year 4.49%. The 2-year 4.08%, and the 30-year 4.99%. Gold at $44.44 the ounce, down 1%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.1%, $95.76 a barrel. Barrel of Brent, $97.70, up by 1.8%. A renewed advance in oil sending stocks lower. Coming up after the close of trading today, we will be hearing from Broadcom, AVGO on the ticker. That stock is higher by 0.8%. Also reporting after the bell, CrowdStrike down 2.7%. After last night's earnings report, Palo Alto Networks now lower by 5.5%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. Back we go to Washington. Balance of Power continues right now. And once again, your hosts, Joe Mathieu and Kailey Leinz.
All right, Charlie Pellet checking on the markets for us. Thank you so much. Here in Washington, it's shaping up to be a very busy day on Capitol Hill as the House is back from the Memorial Day recess. And as Joe just told you, they could in very short order be voting on a war powers resolution that could very well pass. If nothing but a symbol, it still would be a rebuke to the president. Meantime, the Senate, of course, is trying to get the wheels turning once again on reconciliation, specifically funding ICE and CBP for 3 years in a bill that had $72 billion worth of funding in it, $1 billion of which originally was supposed to go to the ballroom being built at the White House. That ballroom money is now stripped out of the legislation, as that was one area where Republicans took a little bit of umbrage. Obviously, they're also concerned about the DOJ's now dropped anti-weaponization fund, or at least dropped for now. So it all has created some hurdle in getting even a partisan reconciliation bill across the Senate floor. Remember, the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, needs 50 votes, as he outlined yesterday.
As I've conveyed to you before, everything comes down to a function of math. It's, do we have the votes? Do we have 50 votes to execute on getting a bill like that across the floor? Because we have to have Republicans hanging together in order to do that.
But that was yesterday, and things have changed, as Kailey mentioned, to the point where we now have what appears to be the skinny reconciliation bill that John Thune preferred. Now, ahead of our conversation that we're about to bring you with Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp, we assembled our political panel for their take on this breaking story. Bloomberg Politics contributors Rick Davis and Jeanne Zaino are with us. Jeanne is a Democratic analyst and democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Rick is a Republican strategist, of course, partner at Stonecourt Capital. I'll start with you, Rick, as our Republican here. Did John Thune just get everything he needs to make this happen?
Yeah, I think the coast is clear. He's got the votes for the basic bill that funds Border Patrol and ICE. Remember, this was part of the deal they cut to pass this funding measure as part of the opening up of the Homeland Security budget earlier this year after a record shutdown. So now the cycle will be complete. My guess is they'll try to do the vote-a-rama tonight while they have everybody and can still keep the coalition together that's willing to vote yes.
Well, so when we consider the people who are willing to vote yes on the actual package, Jeanne, they may still ask for votes on other things. We actually heard this, our colleagues on Capitol Hill reporting that they spoke with Senator Tom Tillis, who wants to make sure that he will get a vote on an amendment to permanently kill the DOJ's anti-weaponization fund. How many amendments that could rebuke the president, even if he's getting what he wants in terms of funding for ICE and CBP across the Senate floor, do you think we realistically could see pass?
We could see a number of them pass, I think, Kailey, because I think when, the acting attorney general went up on the Hill yesterday and said, this, slush fund is a done deal, it's dead in the water. When he was asked, would you codify that? Would you put that in writing? He said no. And of course, the other element of that, the shield on Donald Trump and his family and his businesses in terms of IRS investigations, that he said remains in place. So I think we're going to see Republicans and Democrats come together on a number of those amendments to try to get people, for Democrats, get Republicans to say and force them to go on the record in saying where they stand on these issues. And I think another thing, this is all a sign that Donald Trump, as he said just about a week ago, his control of the Senate and the House is waning a bit. He can see that now because what's going to come through here in the end is going to be this skinny reconciliation bill without all of the other add-ons that he wanted in there.
Just want to mention a breaking headline that just crossed the terminal, not having to do with this, but Anthropic now said to tap Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs to lead its massive IPO. I will note that both stocks are lower right now in what was already a downdraft in the sector. Morgan Stanley's down $4, Goldman Sachs down 18, roughly 2% losses for both of those as the firms gear up for Anthropic. Rick Davis, is the mood music actually changing for Donald Trump on Capitol Hill when you consider the war powers vote that's about to pass, albeit symbolically, in the House, when you consider the pushback on the Ballroom, which, by the way, was supposed to include security money for the White House, the visceral reaction that Republican senators had to this anti-weaponization fund? How do you characterize it?
Well, there's definitely a little more chippy mood amongst Republican members about Trump. But remember, I mean, the Ballroom was thrown out of this reconciliation bill because it didn't meet the parliamentary standards. So the parliamentary, the Senate really stripped it out. It wasn't angry Republicans. And that's another thing, too. I mean, a lot of these amendments Jeanne was talking about regarding this bill may not be germane to a reconciliation bill. So as much as they want these sort of performative votes, it doesn't mean they're actually going to make it into the bill. That's the trouble with reconciliation. But that being said, I mean, the War Powers Act, I mean, it's a privileged motion. They're going to vote on it. They tried to avoid it in the House, but the leadership had to cave to the procedures again that dictated the outcome. And obviously, there are a lot of people, especially those members who are in Republican swing districts, they want to register their opposition to this war and may not have anything to do with actually stopping the war, but to insulate themselves from a pretty grumpy public in their districts who are saying, what the heck are we doing here? This goes on and on and on. And from what we've heard from the White House today in an interview with Donald Trump, it doesn't sound like there's any short-term reconciliation of this conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. So everyone can now expect this to be a major political issue when it comes to the midterm elections.
Well, of course, President Trump made those comments in an interview with the New York Post, and the New York Post is now reporting that President Trump is going to attend Game 3 of the NBA Finals in New York next week, Monday, June 8th. He's going to go watch the Knicks.
Is that courtside or skybox? What do you think?
I don't know. Courtside might be kind of tough
that
for
would be a
Secret
little
Service
tough
purposes. But this is going to bookend the president's birthday week.
Yeah.
Remember, he turns 80 on June 14th.
Party.
On June 14th is the UFC fight at the White House, and we can see the construction of the octagon going up in real time. Just wanted to mention that for our audience. Again, June 8th, Trump will be in New York for that Knicks game. Jeanne, I don't know if you have tickets to that, but clearly the president is keeping himself occupied even as he's obviously still trying to figure out how to get ourselves out of a war in the Middle East.
Absolutely. Kailey, you're teasing me. I would love to go. It is all the rage here. I'm in New York. Please, Kailey, get me tickets. I want to go. And
we'll see what we can do, Jeanne.
Thank you, Kailey. You're the woman to do it. It would be fascinating if he sat on the floor. Can't imagine they could do that security-wise. But yeah, I mean, the president is looking at a huge couple weeks here. Not to mention he turns 80 years old. Is a big moment. And also, of course, as we were just talking about everything going on with Congress, and then just admitting, as you were just talking about, that the Strait could remain closed until Labor Day in the midst of all of these primaries. I mean, I think to your previous point, I do think that this is a moment when Trump is starting to lose some of the sway he had over congressmen and women, senators who are running for re-election and are finding it difficult to abide by some of what he has put forward in the last few weeks.
Interesting. Jeanne, I think Rick Davis is the one with the sports connections if you're looking for last minute tickets.
Please,
here.
Rick.
There's a question about FISA renewal. And it's a question that Kailey and I were pursuing yesterday. We were told that this wasn't a thing, but apparently it is. Bloomberg News is reporting the pushback that we're seeing now to Bill Pulte being tapped as the president's new director of intelligence, the DNI. Mark Warner, vice chair of the Intel Committee, is asking John Thune to try to thumb the scale here on this and get the president to reconsider. Chuck Schumer is making similar overtures here, knowing that FISA 702 renewal is upon us. And if Bill Pulte is the man with the keys, not everybody on Capitol Hill is comfortable with this whole idea. It's something that is in the air on Capitol Hill as the president asks, of course, for a budget that is currently being drawn up on Capitol Hill. The Treasury Secretary was actually asked about Bill Pulte earlier today in a hearing that's actually still underway. Tom Tillis, the Republican from North Carolina, asked him about this report that he threatened to knock out Bill Pulte, knowing that there had been some talk of Scott Bessent getting in a bit of a dust-up with Elon Musk. We actually had to bleep this, Rick and Jeanne. Listen to how this went.
Did you actually tell Pulte you were going to punch him in the face?
No, sir. I actually said I was going to kick his.
Good. Okay. Good. I share the emotion. Thank you.
And as I said, that was last summer, summer 25, and many teams have fights in the locker room and then go out and win for the team on the field.
Rick Davis, does Tom Tillis illustrate the way most Republican senators feel about Bill Pulte, and could that jeopardize FISA renewal?
Yeah, this is one of the hot topics in Washington today. The lobbyist lunch pools are heavy betting that the guy doesn't last 30 days in the job. Everyone's talking about it. It's a total non-starter. Nobody can figure out whether this is Trump just being Trump and driving everybody insane with no real intent to nominate him for the job. He's unconfirmable. And so really the question isn't what happens in that job with Bill Pulte. It's how long does he actually last in that job before somebody else gets appointed. It's just another day in Washington, but somebody's going to make money on the over and under on this, and I'm placing my bets tonight.
Well, as we consider time here, whether it's the time that he actually is going to serve in this acting role, there's also the question, Jeanne, of President Trump's announcement timing in saying that he was going to be acting DNI. Tulsi Gabbard was supposed to be in the job until the end of this month, and instead, the president announces at the beginning of June that Bill Pulte is coming in, and did so less than 10 days before the FISA expiration deadline. FISA, of course, a key issue when we're considering the American intelligence apparatus. Did the president just not wait long enough? Should he have done this 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, he should have never done it. If he was going to do it and he had the interests of national security for the United States at heart, he should obviously not do it. But if he's going to do it, he should wait until FISA had passed. I mean, Democrats have so much leverage on this thing because Republicans cannot and will not pass it on their own. And you nominate somebody like Bill Pulte, and he is unconfirmable, but it's almost beside the point. He doesn't have to be confirmed to be acting. And I think that is a big concern for so many of us who care about national security. You're going to put somebody in there for 250 plus days, some odd days, and they have no national security experience as the law requires. And there's a lot of damage they could do to our national security and our allies in that time. So I would hope that Republicans and Democrats step up. But again, there's not a lot they can do because he's only acting. He won't come to the Hill for a vote.
All right, Jeanne, Zaino, and Rick Davis, Bloomberg Politics contributors, thank you both so much for joining us. Rick and Jeanne helping outline some of the areas in which we're starting to see a little bit of a break between a Republican president and Donald Trump and a Republican-controlled Congress on Capitol Hill. Of course, we've seen fissures, if you will, in the Republican Party predating this, and perhaps we've seen them on display most acutely in places like Georgia, especially in the aftermath of the 2020 election. And I'm pleased to say joining us now from Las Vegas for an important conversation with the governor of Georgia is Bloomberg's Washington correspondent, Tyler Kendall. Tyler, we'll head it over to you.
Hey, Kailey, thanks so much. As you mentioned, I'm pleased to say that I'm joined now by Republican Governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. Governor, it's so nice to see you here in Las Vegas. You're normally in Atlanta. I'm normally in Washington, but we both find ourselves here on the sidelines of an energy conference because the idea of electricity demand tied to data centers has become a nationwide issue. And we wanted to talk to you today because Georgia is one of the fastest growing markets when it comes to data centers. And I'm curious, how prepared is your electric grid for this influx in demand?
Well, we're very prepared. We got a great story to tell in Georgia, and it's not just for data centers, but also large load customers like the new Hyundai Meta plant. Marty and I were there yesterday, rolling the first new Kia Sportage hybrid off of the line. So they're a huge power user. So we're not only ramping up our power supply for data centers, but also for large load customers, also making sure we take care of all our residential and other small business customers in Georgia. We have a great story to tell. Our rates are dropping and our generation's going up.
But a big part of this demand is coming from data centers because Southern Company, which owns and operates Georgia Power, is estimating that power is expected to jump 8 to 10% annually, driven solely by the AI build-out. What can you share about how you are helping to keep rates down when you have these big tech companies that are coming in and there is this risk to consumers?
Well, we're charging the big tech companies more. I mean, we've got a great rate structure in Georgia. Our Public Service Commission, the Georgia General Assembly, along with our power producers like Georgia Power, have put a structure in that as we build the generation out, and they're going to do that by half of what they have now just in the next, less than 10 years, which is pretty incredible that a state can do that to meet the demands of its customers, but also making them pay for that build out and tying that into rates long term. It's actually allowed Georgia Power a year or so ago to freeze residential rates for 3 years in Georgia. Since then, they've actually dropped residential rates by a few dollars a month. And in the future, they're going to be giving money back to the ratepayers as this build out continues. So it's really unlike any other model in the country where you have other states, other markets where rates are going up anywhere from 15 to 30%. And for us, that's a great economic advantage for us to sell the state saying, come, we have clean energy with Vogtle 3 and 4 online now, a lot of solar, we can meet your needs, but also your cost is going to be as good as anywhere in the country.
I'm glad that you brought up that rate freeze because I wanted to ask you about it because Georgia Power received one of the largest federal energy loans in history. It was $22 billion, but ratepayers are going to be on the hook to pay that loan back, right? So should Georgia consider extending that rate freeze, for example?
They've actually done away with the rate freeze now and are lowering rates. So, there was a rate freeze. Now they've gone back and said, hey, because of the business that we have coming, the way we've structured the deals, we're now going to be able to lower rates by, I can't remember, it's $5 or $6 a month per customer from the residential side. And then in the future, with even more of this coming, also large load customers, like I mentioned, the Hyundai Meta plant, the Rivian plant's going to come online. We have other big manufacturers that are coming to our state, producing great paying jobs with great benefits, bringing economic prosperity to all parts of our state. They're actually going to be able to lower rates and return money to the taxpayer. I know that is hard to believe because that is not happening anywhere else in the rest of the country, which is why our story is so compelling.
Well, part of this is also coming into the politics of the state. We're seeing it in the gubernatorial race, your term limited, but we have the Democratic candidate, Keisha Lance Bottoms, advocating that we should see a freeze in construction when it comes to this. Has any party figured out?
Well, that's just an insane position to take because, I was down in Early County, Georgia. It's one of the poorest counties in the United States of America. And they, as soon as I got out of the car, were coming to me going, please help us with our data center. We want to build a data center here. We know that will provide good paying jobs for our community because they just had a sawmill that shut down. And they know that it'll be good for helping them reduce property taxes like they're doing in Columbia County. Now, I'm not saying we need to put a data center in every community. We certainly don't need to be pushing them in communities where the local governments and the people don't want it. But there are many places around the state where people do want it, and that's where we need to work with them. So I think it's irresponsible for Keisha Lance Bottoms to say freeze construction. I mean, we're the #1 state in the country for business. We're producing jobs in all parts of our state, and that is my goal that I'm going to continue to work on as long as I'm governor.
If we broaden this out to beyond electricity prices, energy prices in general, yesterday in Georgia, we saw that suspension of the state gas tax expire. There's so much emphasis on this these days due to the ongoing conflict in Iran, which at this point, we still don't have a resolution to. Why was now the right moment to let that suspension lapse?
Well, it's very expensive doing the gas tax suspension because we have to take money out of the state's reserve fund to put back into our road fund so we don't lose the ability to keep up our roads, bridges, paving roads for local communities and doing projects that are very important to the state. So we couldn't do that forever. I appreciate the General Assembly passing that bill during the legislative session. We extended it to get past the holiday weekend. And look, I'm like everybody else. I hope the conflict gets resolved sooner rather than later, and I believe that motor fuel and diesel fuel prices will drop. But if you look at what the state has been doing for affordability, I mean, at the same time we suspended the gas tax, he also had us giving $250 rebates, income tax rebates to everybody that paid taxes last year, $500 for a family. We've got $1 billion of property tax relief coming to the citizens of our state. So we've been dealing with affordability for the last 4 years. This is the 4th year in a row we've done an income tax rebate. We've cut the income tax, both corporate and personal, again this year. 4th year in a row we did no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. And so, we wanted to help with the motor fuel situation to get people into the summer and help our school districts and other small businesses get past the holiday weekend.
But we are gearing up for some of the busiest driving time in this country. I can say I did ask President Trump last week if the federal government is still considering a federal gas tax holiday. It seems to be something that's still on the table, but they look at states like Georgia sort of as a template here on what would really work. Do you think that at the federal level, that's something worth pursuing?
I think, we're in a completely different situation than the federal government. We have to balance our budget. If you look at like a lot of the blue run states with Democratic governors, they're not in a position to do this because they don't have the money to replace it that's going into a dedicated motor fuel fund to help keep roads paved, bridges built, and keep up with congestion demand in the state. We've been very fortunate because we budgeted conservatively. We had a robust rainy day fund, and we were able to offset the money that we're exempting for the tax. The federal government certainly doesn't have the money to do that, which I think is where some of the pushback that has come So it's really been a testament to our state, to the leadership that we've had in our state, to be able to even do this as much as we have. And we've done this for several years now. We've returned or saved taxpayers over $12 billion just since we came out of COVID in the state of Georgia. There's not many states that can say per capita, per person, that amount of savings or refunds like we've done in Georgia. And it's because we've had good leadership, not just from the governor's office, but from the General Assembly. And that's what this election's all about. You know, you got Keisha Lance Bottoms wanting to put moratoriums on growth and business and driving our economy, and we're doing things like this to help people with affordability. Well,
since you brought up politics, in the final minutes I have you, I have a few questions on that. Yes, on the gubernatorial race, but also there's a key runoff next week when it comes to the Senate seat. Do you think Republicans are positioned well right now in order to retain the majorities in Congress, given all of these headwinds that we're seeing around the affordability issues that you yourself are talking about?
Well, I think there's no doubt this is a challenging political environment, and it always is for any majority party in the second term of a presidential administration, whether it's Donald Trump or anybody else. But I feel very optimistic because of the thing, at least in Georgia anyway, because of the things that we've been able to do in our state, the policies that we can run on and remind people of things that we've pushed and that we have done, and also what we're going to do in the future. I feel very optimistic. I also feel optimistic about, getting one of our Senate seats back. I'm working hard for Derek Dooley, who I've endorsed to be our nominee, because I think he's the best person that can beat John Ossoff and keep the majority of the U.S. Senate. But I also think Republicans got to get on offense. We cannot continue to be on defense. We need to be on offense about what's in the working families tax credit, all the good policies that the Trump administration is doing, and not let the other side dictate what the political debate's going to be.
If Derek Dooley doesn't win that nomination, do you think Republicans should be spending their resources elsewhere to help boost other Senate seats across the country so that they can retain the Senate majority?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to speak for any other, national groups and what they might do, but I know that our political groups will. I mean, I'm going to be supporting our Republican nominees. We have to win in Georgia. We have a lot at stake. We've had a great 20-year run when you think about our former Governor Sonny Perdue, Governor Nathan Deal, my administration, and we need to keep there's such a stark contrast between the Democrats and the Republicans and the kind of leadership that you would see in the governor's office and in the U.S. Senate. And so, I'm certainly going to be all in no matter what happens.
So this is for 2026. Last question for you, Governor. Your term limited. Should we expect you to stay in public life after your term is over? I'm wondering if you have a timeline.
That is a great question. I'll have to come back and answer later, because my focus is on helping Derek Dooley win the U.S. Senate runoff, and then after we get that done, I'll be able to think about other things.
But do you have any timeline on if you're going to make a decision about 2028?
I mean, I still got to serve till the first part of 2027 in this role, which it is very busy, and that is what where my focus is going to be, and also helping make sure that our ticket wins in November. That is my #1 priority.
All right, Republican Governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. Governor, thank you so much for spending time with us today here on Bloomberg Television and Radio. Joe and Kailey, I'll send it back to you in Washington.
Really great, Tyler. Thank you so much. With us live from the Las Vegas Strip, Tyler Kendall and the governor of Georgia. He wasn't going there, but we'll keep asking him, as everyone does. Indeed, I'm Joe Mathieu in Washington alongside Kailey Leinz. This is Balance of Power, the Wednesday edition. We're going to turn our attention to the White House next. First, we want to check on Wall Street. It's been a tough session so far, and Charlie Pellet has the latest from World Headquarters in New York. Charlie, what do you have?
All right, now I've got to begin with crude oil, Joe Mathieu, because we have got WTI pushing higher, back above $96 a barrel, $96.20 right now, up 2.6%. We've got Brent 98.10, up by about 2.1%. Really just one of a number of factors helping send stocks lower today. A renewed advance in oil, sending stocks down. Bond yields are rising on concern that an escalation of hostilities between the U.S. and Iran will hinder prospects for a peace deal. Equities retreating from yesterday's record. You recall we closed above 7,600 on the S&P. Right now it's 75.60, down 50 points. That is a drop of 0.6%. You run the GIP screen and you see that we're very close to session lows on the S&P. The Dow pulling back by 445 points, down 0.9%. NASDAQ lower by 1%. Interestingly, though, the SOX, that is the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index, it is up now by 1.1%. All of this with a 10-year at 4.49%, the 2-year 4.08%, and the 30-year 4.99%. Spot gold down 1.1%, $49 lower at $44.39, and crude bears repeating. WTI 96.17 a barrel at 2.6%. Brent 98.06 up by 2.1%. Google swinging between gains and losses, more correctly Alphabet. Right now it is down 0.2%. The Google parent has upsized its equity raise to $84.75 billion from the $80 billion that it announced just 2 days earlier in a bid to help fund growing artificial intelligence spending plans. And sources tell Bloomberg SpaceX is planning to offer shares at $135 apiece to raise $75 billion in its IPO, with Elon Musk rejecting another Wall Street convention by setting a fixed price ahead of the marketing phase of the deal. Those sources say the rocket, satellite, and AI company aims to sell 556 million shares in the offering. And the New York Post is reporting that President Trump plans to attend the Knicks game on June 8th. Again, recapping here, the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all in the red, with the S&P down 49, 75.60 where we stand now, down 0.6%. Big move in oil. West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.6%, 96.17 a barrel. And for on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now, wherever you get your podcasts. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your hosts, Joe Mathieu and Kailey Leinz.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Charlie, we'll be back in a bit, about 15 minutes time, with another check on the markets. It's been a pretty busy day in the news department here in the nation's capital as the Ballroom is kicked out of the bill. It's where we started our conversation with our panel this hour. Indeed, the White House Ballroom, the president's proposed ballroom that was supposed to include also additional security funding as part of a reconciliation bill on Capitol Hill, has been removed at the committee level. This was, for some, a deal breaker. And knowing that the president's anti-weaponization fund has been dropped, Kailey Leinz, this does seem to clear the path for a reconciliation vote to fund ICE, border protection. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, and a question of how much pain Republicans will have to endure on the journey. If we are to see a vote-a-rama in the United States Senate, as long as the amendment is relevant, Democrats can force votes on a number of tough issues for Republicans, including a permanent ban on such things as an anti-weaponization fund. It will be revealing, perhaps, to see where Republicans are willing to draw lines. And, of course, we also may see later on this afternoon Republicans drawing lines in the House on the war with Iran. The vote has been moved. We were expecting it would hit the House floor. A war powers resolution would hit the floor at 2 p.m. Eastern. That vote has now been bumped to 4 p.m. Eastern. But the expectation here in Washington is that this rebuke of the president on the operation in Iran could very well pass. So for more on the White House's perspective on things, we turn now to Skylar Woodhouse, Bloomberg White House correspondent, who is joining us now live from the North Lawn. So, Skylar, obviously the president, we assume, will just kind of ignore a war powers resolution, even if it does pass. He could veto it if it gets through the Senate as well. He could challenge the constitutionality of it in court. But fundamentally, if the House is signaling it's running out of patience when it comes to the war with Iran, is President Trump also running out of patience? Is that not what we're seeing in his commentary and rhetoric?
Yeah, Kailey, well, the president has made it pretty clear that he would like to see a deal. He has continued to repeat pretty much the same talking points, that he expects a deal to be coming, that they're close to securing a deal, that a deal could be coming shortly, but we have still not seen that official deal. But also, it's been a pretty quiet day here at the White House. We have not heard or seen from President Trump, which is a bit unusual just because, the president really does take the time to engage with the press, but we have not heard or seen from him. And so, there's a lot of questions on where do the talks stand. The president, I would say the talks between the U.S., Iran, and what's going on with Israel and Lebanon, things are very tense and fragile right now. So it's raising a lot of questions as to when we can expect to see that deal. And the president earlier, speaking in the Pod Force One podcast, did mention that the U.S. blockade could potentially continue through Labor Day. So we'll have to see how much longer this actually goes on.
Important news on tariffs as well, Skylar. I'd love to hear from you on this, because the White House is now proposing 10%, at least 10% tariffs on imports from 60 trading partners, including Canada, Mexico, and the EU. And this has to do, following the investigation, with forced labor. How is the White House justifying this?
Yeah, so I don't think this is a total shock. I mean, look, this is coming after the Supreme Court struck down the president's tariff policies. And since the president came back to office, he has, made his tariff agenda essentially his baby. And it is something that he has really prioritized. So the fact that we are sort of seeing this next step post the Supreme Court ruling, it's not a total shock, but I think it'll be interesting to see how does this play out. Do these new rates get taken to court? And we'll obviously have to see how the public comment review period goes as well.
Everything's taken to court these days, isn't it? Skylar, thank you so much. Skylar Woodhouse, live from a gorgeous-looking day on the North Lawn of the White House. I'm Joe Mathieu alongside Kailey Leinz. And coming up, we'll speak with a Democratic member of Congress about all of this, Jake Auchincloss. The Marine Corps combat veteran will join us live from Capitol Hill with the way forward on Iran and so many other stories, only here on Balance of Power, Bloomberg TV and radio.
It's 1:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We're looking at losses for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ, pulling back from yesterday's records. S&P right now at 75.65. We're down 43, a drop there of 0.6%. Dow Industrials down 420. A drop there of 0.8%, while NASDAQ is down 247, a drop there of 0.9%. This time yesterday, we had the S&P 500 index right around 7,600, 75.66, a drop right now of 0.6%. The Sachs, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index, is higher by 1.2%. The 10-year 4.49%, the 2-year 4.08%, and the 30-year 4.99%. Gold at $44.40 the ounce, lower by 1.1%. West Texas Intermediate crude 96.24 the barrel, up 2.6%. Barrel of Brent 98.12 for Brent crude, that is a gain of 2.2%. Bank of America is continuing to hire, even as AI and other tech tools take off and cut off many traditional career paths. Next week, 2,000 summer interns and another 2,000 full-time recruits from college campuses will start in roles across the firm's 8 lines of businesses. Bank of America shares right now, they are trading a little changed. Also coming up at 2:30 p.m. Wall Street time, Danny Berger will be sitting down with Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan at the Forbes Iconoclast Summit here in New York. Again, recapping here, stocks are trading lower. The S&P down 42, drop there of 0.6%. Back we go to Washington. Balance of Power continues now. And once again, your hosts, here they are, Joe Mathieu and Kailey Leinz.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. I'm Kailey Leinz alongside Joe Mathieu here in Washington, where the House is back in session today. There's votes ongoing on the floor right now, but it's really a later vote this afternoon that we will be paying closest attention to. 4 p.m. is when the House is expected to take up the War Powers Resolution, the very same one that leadership had to table or polled before the Memorial Day recess because, given Republican absences, it looked like it could pass. Now they're back in town. They have no choice but to vote on this today because there is a clock on this particular resolution given House rules. And once again, we could be dealing with a Republican House of Representatives that is not able to stop the passage of a resolution rebuking the president's strategy and operations in Iran. Yes, Joe, largely this is a symbolic vote either way, and yet taken in tandem with Republican pushback on the Ballroom and the anti-weaponization fund, even in some primary contests, it's starting to feel like a pattern.
This is true. And remember, the last time this hit the floor, it was yanked because it was going to pass. It ended up being a tie, and it does look like the Republican leaders in the House will not be able to block it this time. And it's where we start our conversation with Congressman Jake Auchincloss. He'll be there for that vote. The Democrat from Massachusetts joins us now from Capitol Hill. Is that what you expect, Congressman, a 4 p.m. vote, and it will pass this time?
That's what I expect, yes.
So obviously you've been spoken for on this, and the question is, what happens now? Even if it passed the Senate, President wouldn't sign it. Is this a symbolic move? How important is that symbol?
It's important because it crystallizes the American public's opinion about what has been a disastrous war against Iran. This president started this war of choice without authorization, without consulting allies, without consulting Congress, without planning for contingencies. And the result has been a massive increase in the prices of food, of fuel, of travel upcoming this summer, and no material progress against his purported war aims: nuclear enrichment, missile capabilities, funding of proxy terror forces. And so while it's true that this president would veto a war powers resolution, what this also exemplifies is that Congress is starting to wake up from its constitutional slumber and is going to take back the steering wheel of foreign policy before he starts a third quagmire in the Middle East.
Well, when we consider the president's veto authority, that's not the only route he could take. There's also the question as to whether or not the administration could challenge the very constitutionality of the War Powers Act in court. Is it possible that in pursuing a War Powers resolution, if it is indeed something that could end up in court and potentially be ruled against, that actually Congress will lose a great deal of its privileges when it comes to weighing in on armed conflict?
I think there's two tracks here. There's a political track and a constitutional track. The political track operates in tight feedback loops of a commander-in-chief getting feedback about his actions, both from Congress and from the American body politic. And that does matter. It mattered with ICE in Minnesota. It mattered with NIH funding. It matters with the slush fund that they're now shutting down. When those feedback loops take out the legs of an out-of-control executive, there is political pushback in the framing that the founders intended, right? Where ambition counteracts ambition and there are checks and balances. Then there's the constitutional track. And the constitutional track is really actually, to me, more simple even than a legal fight over the war powers. The War Powers resolution, the War Powers Act, I should say, is broken. It has been a cession since the 1970s of congressional power to executives of both parties. And I think a first order of business for future Congresses, future administrations, needs to be fixing the War Powers Act so that when the United States goes to war, it goes to war with Congress, Article 1, declaring it.
Well, of course, Congressman, if you ask the White House, they would tell you that we are not at war and that we're in fact in a ceasefire right now. And I'd like to ask you, as both a lawmaker and a combat Marine Corps veteran, is it disingenuous to be telling the families of people serving in harm's way that we're in a ceasefire when in fact we're shooting at each other every day?
It's a lie. The United States is at war, and I find it so shameful, not just the administration's lies, but the complicity of congressional Republicans. And you hear them torture the logic. It's really quite something. They'll say, oh, well, they have 60 days, but then because there was a ceasefire, the clock actually restarts after those ceasefire. It's complete nonsense. This war was illegal on day one, not day 61, on day one, and here's why. The president can launch hostilities in one of two circumstances. One is Congress says you can, and the second is an imminent threat to the security of the United States homeland. Neither of those contingencies existed when this president launched this war on day one. It was illegal on day one.
Well, when we consider the threat assessment you allude to, Congressman, obviously that is informed by the nation's intelligence gathering through our 18 intelligence agencies, all of which will now be overseen, at least on an acting basis, by Bill Pulte, the FHFA chief, who is now acting DNI. We're seeing murmurs already in the Senate that this potentially could be disruptive to an extension of FISA Section 702. Where do you come down on this issue? What's more important, extending FISA for the sake of national security, or using leverage to make sure Bill Pulte cannot serve in this role even on an acting basis?
Well, I'm not going to vote to extend FISA on a long-term basis without significant reforms. Absolutely no interest in granting this administration more power when it's already abused the power it has so grotesquely. I don't know Pulte. My committee of jurisdiction doesn't cover HUD. doesn't seem to have any credentials for the role he's taking on. But, actually my bigger concern is not just the personnel, it's whether intelligence is being incorporated into decision-making for national security in general. For example, there is 20 years worth of intelligence that indicates that Iran's response to kinetic attacks against it would be to close the Strait of Hormuz. There's more recent intelligence about Iran's drone and counter-drone capabilities in that strait and its use of its Mosquito fleet. None of that was incorporated into planning for this war at the highest levels. I think the president had his comms director and his deputy comms director in the national security room when he made his final decision. Regardless of who's in charge of intelligence, there is no intelligence being incorporated into war-making powers at the commander-in-chief level right now.
The president said in a podcast interview, Congressman, that the Strait of Hormuz could be closed, well, he said unlikely, could be closed through Labor Day, implying to many that he does not plan to use military action to reopen the strait, that he's girding for a longer set of negotiations. And I wonder, with that said, if we need to start relieving some of the service members and some of the material that has been overextended in deployment in that area, do we need to start sending some boats home for refurbishment, send sailors and airmen home to their families?
Well, I think it's certainly the case that Iran is going to have choke point control over the Strait of Hormuz, either expressly or by implication for months or even years to come. That's the strategic disaster of this war, is that we played our card of air dominance, which had been established with the 12-day war last year, and Iran matched that air dominance by picking up the card of sea denial through a strait through which 20% of the world's oil transits. It was just a massive strategic blunder, despite the operational excellence of the U.S. military. Of course, we got to take care of our troops and ensure that there's readiness, not just in the Middle East, but also readiness in the Indo-Pacific, where I do worry about a depletion of our ability to operate in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait and elsewhere. But the most important way that we can ensure that readiness in the Indo-Pacific and that theater is to prevent a third forever war in the Middle East. The American public does not want to get bogged down yet again in that region of the world.
Well, as you allude to another region of the world, the Indo-Pacific, and of course another adversary there in China, concern over ceding the lead we have on artificial intelligence to China is why we saw President Trump scale back an executive order on AI and coordination between government and AI companies on cybersecurity risks. Specifically, the government will now have a voluntary 30-day window to review models before they become public rather than 90 days. And we just saw on Capitol Hill, according to our colleagues who report on Congress for us, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, walk into the Speaker's office for meetings today. And I just wonder if you think, from a policy perspective, if the U.S. government, both legislative and executive, is doing enough to address the threat of artificial intelligence, where the line is on making sure that we can innovate here in the United States and not cede ground to China, but also make sure there are guardrails.
Americans are pioneers and builders. We've always embraced science and technology. We shouldn't stop doing that. But what we should not allow is for the tech lobby to claim that if we're going to compete against China, they have to have free rein to operate as they see fit. And I think the actual most pointed example of that is in how they exploit our children. These social media corporations, Meta, TikTok, they are attention fracking our kids, and they are going to double down on that nefarious business strategy by creating these companion bots that are going to further keep our kids scrolling and are going to further distort mental health and our kids' sense of self and society. And we need to just say, you're not going to use our kids as a natural resource to mine out of some claim that that's how we're going to outcompete China. Absolutely not. We're going to protect our kids' cognitive development and mental health from what I think are the tobacco companies of the 21st century. So I have got no patience for that argument. I would also just say, though, we're talking about AI here. The other big sector where we're really competing on science and technology with China is biotechnology. That is not being discussed as much. To me, it is just as important. And just recently, this administration, in addition to the complete incompetence at the Food and Drug Administration, in addition to freezing grants at the National Institutes of Health, has put forward a new executive order rule that would allow the NIH to freeze grants based on political considerations. This kind of behavior is undercutting U.S. biotech and science competitiveness at a time when China is investing hundreds of billions of dollars. And I really hope we have bipartisan pushback against it.
Well, Congressman, as I mentioned, Sam Altman is on the Hill today. We saw a Maine Democratic Senate candidate, Graham Plattner, on the Hill yesterday. He was meeting with senators, but of course you have personally said that you find his Nazi tattoo disqualifying, even though you would not like to see Susan Collins, the Republican, reelected. Did he reach out to you while he was in town to try to mend fences at all?
As you said, I've made my opinions on that race clear. What I'm thinking about today when it comes to the United States Senate is not Maine, it's what just happened in Iowa. You look at Josh Turek and the campaign that he has run and the campaign he is going to win in November. He is a kind of Democrat that I can be proud of.
Really interesting. Are you going to be traveling the next couple of months, Congressman, to help other Democratic candidates on the primary trail?
Yes, and as the chair of Majority Democrats, which is a group of 40 elected officials committing to reinventing the Democratic Party, I am in support of those elected officials, mayors, governors, members of Congress, and also our sister organization, The Bench, has invested in about 24 terrific candidates, Josh Turek being one of them, and I'll be in support of that full bench of candidates, because ultimately personnel, candidates, people is what reinvigorates a party, and I'm so excited about the young talent that we're seeing across this country.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts joining us live from Capitol Hill. And of course, the Congressman mentioning the victory for Josh Turek in Iowa yesterday. Also kind of a victory for Chuck Schumer,
That's correct.
The Senate minority
His endorsement
leader.
was on the line.
It was. That was one of the races we were watching. Of course, there were others, and many of them we don't actually know the end result. California going to be counting ballots for some time to come.
Come on, guys. By the way, pretty artful there on the Graham
that was quite a
Plattner
turn.
question. We just we did a 180. I'm guessing that they didn't have dinner together last night.
No, it didn't seem like that.
So we've got a vote, 4 p.m. War Powers, as we've established. We'll have numbers for you and likely results on the late edition of Balance of Power, 5 p.m. Eastern here on Bloomberg.